Good afternoon, everyone. You're tuned in with the Encourage Services Show. I am your host, Encouragement Javi. Today, we're going to be speaking about your life cycle. When we say your life cycle, we mean the cycle of how your life has been going and the cycle of how you want your life to go. And by the way, just in case you're tuning in, and you do not know, our show is geared toward those who are trying to overcome traumatic stress events. It could be from childhood. A lot of times, people who've gone through traumatic childhood issues, whether it was sexual, whether it was physical, mental, emotional, or all of them, they are trying to find ways to continue to cope and to continue to better themselves. And it could be that they already know how to cope, but they're just trying to find better ways to love themselves more. Our show is also geared toward those who's gone through some type of extreme dysfunction, where they're just trying to find a balance in their everyday life, which is why we call the type of service that we do encouragement services. Our encouragement services is a little different because we're geared toward encouraging you to open up your heart towards forgiveness and towards dealing with certain things that are in your heart that could perhaps block you from living your life in full cycle like you will have it to be. Because sometimes those of us who's gone through extreme stress or trauma related issues or extreme dysfunction can have a life cycle where we just go around in a circle after circle after circle. Say, for example, maybe instead of keeping one job, perhaps because we don't get to the root issue of dealing with social skills and learning how to adapt through social skills, we'll go from one job to another, perhaps because we don't know how to deal with the root cause of not knowing how to deal with people, especially if you've gone through some type of extreme trauma as you were growing up. And it could have happened, and sometimes the person was in their 20s. Sometimes people may live with people till they're in their 30s like that, and then sometimes people may be placed out of the home. We're not saying that you've been through it or that's how come you cannot keep a job. I was giving an example of sometimes how our life can go in a cycle. And sometimes once it gets started in that cycle, you'll have somebody, for example, hopping from one job to another. And it could be because, not all the times, but sometimes when you're dealing with trauma and things that people haven't really wanted to deal with, it could be because they're not balanced in certain areas. And when I say balance, I mean learning how to cope and develop a certain type of skill of communications with people in the proper way that maybe they should. And sometimes it could be because maybe they just weren't taught that. There are people walking around who are in their teens, 20s, and 30s that just have not been taught that, and they may be embarrassed to admit it, and so they just continue in that cycle instead of maybe realizing, well, maybe this is the root cause of this issue and I should probably join a support group to deal with it. Everybody is on different levels, and they know sometimes perhaps what they need to work on if they're looking deep within their heart. And what we're wanting to do is help you look in your heart to find out how you can address some root causes or things so that you can have your life cycle go in the direction you want it to go, instead of your life cycle going into the direction of curse after curse after curse, or just around and around in a negative way. I just wanted to explain that to you. Now, if you'd like, you may get some paper and jot some things down. If not, and you just want to listen, that is fine. Thank you so much for our followers and for you all's comments and your emails and your calls. I do receive them and I do listen to all of them, and it's very much appreciated. Now, before I get started, I wanted to let you know that we are a Christian organization. However, you do not have to be a Christian to receive free encouragement services. We usually send out encouraging emails and letters and render phone calls on the 8th and 21st of every month. Sometimes people ask us that we do it weekly as far as the calls, and that's fine. And we have intakes forms for you to fill out. It's about 6 pages, and all that consists of is where you write down why you would like the service. The service is free of charge, and if you want to click on general encouragement, you can, or Christian, or both. So that way, if you don't want to receive any scriptures, that's fine. But if you'd like to receive scriptures, sometimes you can check both. From time to time, we do input Christianity with what we're saying, but not all the time. Sometimes we'll do a show where it's just maybe creating a mission statement, if that's our goal plan for that month. And then we might do a next show where we input some Bible verses in. I just wanted to let you know so that you would know. Today we're going to be speaking about creating a mission statement. This is what we're on from the first week of January until the end of March. And then the beginning of April through the end of June, we're going to be creating a vision statement. And we'll be working on things such as continued sins in the heart. It could be pride, arrogancy, gossip, envy, jealousy. And again, it's geared toward helping those people who have had to deal with a lot of traumatic crisis in their life. And the reason we're dealing with sins of the heart is because sometimes when I say we, people who have gone through so much stress and so much trauma or so much abuse, sometimes we can have certain things sneak in our heart. Of course, everyone can, but this is what our organization is about, and we are wanting to help you be able to get through that and to deal with that. And you will see as we're sending out the Microsoft documents and the PowerPoints, how you'll be able to do certain building blocks for yourself, how you'll be able to write your vision statement in, or your mission statement in, or whatever your statement in a sentence is. We work on various different things throughout the year, and we keep it for as long as 3 months, so that you can have an ongoing process of working on whatever we're dealing with for those 3 months, because it takes a while to sink in our heart, sometimes in our mind, when you're talking about change, because you're trying to change your present behavior to a goal that you're wanting. And if we're used to walking a certain way all the time, it takes a while. And even after 3 months, it's still certain things you have to do just about every day to continue to keep your heart clean in certain areas. And only you know what's in your heart, not me. So you know what you need to work on. So we're getting ready to go to our slides. I'm reading off of my PowerPoint slide. It says creating a mission statement. When you're getting ready to create a mission statement in your life, you want to look at the type of space that one is creating in your life. Say you want to look at what type of space you are creating in your life inwardly. This is very important so that you won't repeat a life cycle of unforgiveness and bitterness and hatred and unresolved issues and uncontrollable anger. These are negative spaces. I'm going to name them off once again for the ones that we're working on this month. The negative spaces are unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, unresolved issues, and uncontrollable anger. A lot of times, and I will give you an example for myself so that you will know, and sometimes I give you an example of other people that I may have known, or with the permission of other people who've used our service, their examples without using their name or where they live at. But with myself, I have found with negative space that when I am trying to grow as a person, that if I have continued unforgiveness in my heart, I cannot hear God like I want. In other words, I can't hear Him speak to me like I want, or if He is and I know it, sometimes I don't understand Him. And when I say I don't understand Him, what I mean is, because I could be very far in my thinking from Him, and in my heart, because I'm choosing to be unforgiving, or perhaps have bitterness in my heart, or hatred, or a lot of unresolved issues that He has put on my heart, or perhaps uncontrollable anger, but this is very, very rare for me to have some of these. It makes it hard for me to hear His settling, calm voice that's speaking to me about things, so that I can go on with my life, because God wants what's best for our lives. So what I have found is, in order for me to transition my heart from having sins of the heart to having what I would call loveness of the heart, and it's just simply, for those people who aren't Christians, a word of saying, in other words, God's heart, but really a loveness of the heart. It's I'm learning to go from unforgiveness to forgiving oneself. And when I say I do a step for you, what I mean is, in this step of unforgiveness to forgiving, there's no way you can just go from saying, okay, I don't want to forget, I don't want to have this discord or hatred in my heart anymore. I don't want to just go around and be unforgiving, and so it's settled, it's done, I forgive, because we have to be in reality about it, which means that some people, if you've been really hurt, really abused from a child on up to adult, and then you get in a relationship, because a lot of times people who've been hurt, especially women, are abused in certain ways, get in relationships with men that are not healthy, and it starts their life cycle of domestic violence. And many times it's not just one person they've gotten into that relationship with, it might be 2 or 3 or 4. And what I've found is, sometimes they may need counseling to recognize what has gone on in their heart, or what has gone on in their life, or what is going on in their soul that's making them do the root causes of their decisions. Because sometimes it could be that they're looking for love in all the wrong places. Say an example of looking for love in the right place could be, I'm going to deal with the issues that I have so that I can get to the root causes of it, so that I won't continue making the same bad choices or mistakes that I have in my life, so that I want, if I perhaps lived with this person or dated this person or married this person and they're not healthy or good for me, I won't make the same mistake again. And sometimes people need counseling for that. For those people who may not need counseling, they're ready sometimes to just open up their heart and just learn on their own. Many times they tend to read books about unforgiveness or by psychologists. Sometimes they might read the Bible a lot, or they'll remember scripture verses, so they will buy videos pertaining to forgiveness, and their heart is just ready to forgive. And as they're doing that and they realize that it's hurting them, they will accept forgiving their self if they've done something bad that they shouldn't have to them. Because many times people do things that are against their conscience, and maybe they had a very high stress level that caused them to do something they wouldn't normally do. Maybe something happened in their life that caused them to do something they wouldn't do, and they just didn't think about it like they should, and they were very irrational about the situation. And then as we're moving on to bitterness, this is where people begin to accept themselves. They realize that not only do they need to forgive themselves, but it's not benefiting them to hate others or to have resentment against someone. And this takes a lot. Sometimes this takes people all of their lives. Sometimes as they forgive someone, it's pretty easy as other people that they meet in their life come along and they do something else to hold on to that unforgiveness for a little bit, because they have been used to holding on to it and had been used to whoever it was that have hurt them in the past. And sometimes they may look at that person as that same person, which can allow bitterness and unforgiveness to creep back in. As long as we're human, even though we're dealing with unforgiveness and forgiving ourselves and accepting ourselves the best we can, sometimes this will creep back into our hearts. And instead of denying it, you want to be able to face it and accept it. And if you are a Christian, repent of it and ask God to show you how to deal with this bitterness instead of running, away. When I say running away, in other words, acting like we don't have a problem with that when we do, because oftentimes as Christians we know that we shouldn't have that, but we're embarrassed that we do have that, and it doesn't help, because God is not wanting to send you oppression or condemn you for that. He understands that you've been hurt and you've been violated, and so the best place to run is to Him and not away from Him. And as you begin to accept yourself and accept Him to teach you about unforgiveness and bitterness, you'll begin to see and you begin to embrace God's love, that it's much easier to walk with God than to run from Him because you think that He's going to punish you. Another thing we get into is hatred. And a lot of times hatred is dealing with unresolved issues. It's just unresolved issues that are dealt with. One example I could give you, because only you know what hatred you have and what unresolved issues you have in your heart. Sometimes we don't know if we just have been ignoring what's going on with our bodies and heart, because not everybody know their bodies and heart like they should. Then they might not know, but the more they get tuned in with themselves and become more accepting to themselves, they will know. But one example would be that I have someone that came through our service of encouragement services, and she had an unresolved issue of always being left alone. So what she did was, she was a victim of abuse when she was younger, and her father was sexually abusive toward her from the time she was about 3, I believe she said, to about 15, 16 years old. And she told her mother since she was 3 or 4 years old, and her mother wouldn't do anything about it. Sometimes she would just allow the father to do that, and she knew what the father was doing. I don't know if the mother was just afraid of the father. She didn't really say. She said she didn't know or understand why she didn't say anything, but she had an unresolved issue in the fact that she hated her mother for not stepping in not saying anything. And when she began to tell her aunts and uncles who cared about her, the father and mother decided to move away. So they moved away to another state, all the way on the other side of the world than where her family was. And they had no contact with them because, of course, the family had reported what had happened to the proper authorities, and the family wound up changing the child's name. They wouldn't let her go to school when they thought that the police would probably be closing in on them. And she said that she never really understood why her mother did all that, but didn't take the choice excuse me, didn't make the choice of standing up for her or allowing her to live with her aunt and uncle, because it was none of that going on within their households, and she had lived with them many a times before. And she said all she remembers her mother saying, "You're my child and I can do with you what I want." And she said that she had so much hate for her that she would never forgive her or the father. And as she got older, she would decide that she was going to try to beat the father. And she said when she realized he overpowered her and that didn't work, and he started tying her to the bed with belts and things like that, that she felt more degraded, because here she was between 12 to 15 years old, and she felt like to her she just let it happen or allowed it to happen. But really, that's how she felt in her mind, but she couldn't do anything about it. She felt totally helpless and felt like it was something that she wanted when really it was pushed upon her. So when she was in her 30s, she said that she was isolated from her family when she ran away and went on her own when she was maybe 16, 17 years old, I believe. But anyway, she said that she felt so impure and so unholy that she didn't want to receive Christ Jesus, because she felt like not only was she a failure, but that she was too unclean. And as a result, she wound up marrying someone who was just very, very, very abusive. And then she wanted to have children, and she realized that she could not conceive, so she thought that God was punishing her, she said, by not being able to have children because of what she did with her father, when really her thinking was a little distorted. And what I mean is, she thought she was participating in a sexual behavior with her father, when really she was being raped and abused. And it took her some time to understand and realize that that was not her fault, and those were not her issues, that although it happened to her, those were her parents' issues that they put upon her. When she had gotten to our service, she said she'd been in counseling for about maybe 2 or 3 years. Some people are in for a year, some 6 months, some 4 or 5 years. It all depends on the person, how it's benefiting them, and if they're wanting to continue to go. But she said she began to realize that she had an unresolved issue, and that she needed to be encouraged to forgive herself. And as we helped her walk through the steps of forgiveness on the phone, she cried a lot. Sometimes our phone calls were only supposed to last 20 minutes, but we'd have her on the phone an hour, sometimes 2 hours in our sections. And within about a year, she had said that she'd chosen to forgive. And so it takes a while when you have a lot of hatred and bitterness and unforgiveness in you, because sometimes it doesn't just come with one. When you have hatred, you might have bitterness and unforgiveness in you, and then it'll come with unresolved issues, and also with some people, depending in certain circumstances, uncontrollable anger. But she was able to deal with unresolved issues, but every time she thought about her parents or they tried to contact her, she would have that hatred come back up. And she said she would just pray, Jesus, please help me to control this hatred in me that's stirring. And that she would begin to breathe. She had begun to take up certain aspects of yoga, and it taught her how to breathe. And eventually she contacted her family, her aunt, her uncles, and they had been concerned about her since her parents had moved her. And she had told them her story of how embarrassed and ashamed she was. They moved her to where they was, and they helped her get on her feet because she had been going back and forth when she left her ex-husband to being homeless. And they helped her get back on her feet, but she stayed in counseling for a little bit, and she still used our service for a little bit. And she said, guess what, Jabby? I can stand on my own 2 feet now, but I still have some unresolved issues. And it was just so happy to know that she gotten to the point where she could just stand on her own 2 feet when it came to sins of the heart, and realize how it was hurting her. But everybody is not at that area to where they want to forgive just yet, and that's okay, because you've had a lot of things to hurt you. But when you're ready, you'll understand. You'll have this rushiness in your heart where you just want to learn to forgive yourself, learn to forgive others, have the steps of forgiveness, and you'll begin to place bitterness with accepting yourself. And little by little, you'll begin to place hatred with unresolved issues that you're dealing with, and your unresolved issues you'll begin to trade that off with creating calmness in your life. And you'll begin to learn to have more peace in your life for yourself. And for those who have uncontrollable anger or outbursts of anger, they'll begin to learn that they need to maintain self-control for their own bodies, which is very important as you're trying to grow. So, now we want to speak about, this is what negative space creates. Now, before we talk about what negative space create, the positive spaces that I was saying, in case you didn't catch them or I didn't say they were positive spaces, is forgiving oneself, accepting oneself, unresolved issues dealt with, creating calmness in your life, and maintaining self-control in your life. This is what negative space creates in your life. Negative space can create unhealthy habits, such as a negative stressor. A negative stressor could be unhealthy eating, or it could be headaches. It could be bad memories. It could be hatred toward others who you do not agree with. And also it can create inward anger, where it causes you to make indecisive decisions, or you just choose to decide before you think about something. Or controlling or aggressively, you can become controlling or aggressively demanding. And if you don't want to be that way, and you want to take time every day and work on yourself, you want to learn what positive space create. So what you might want to do is, we have a podcast called Creating Positive Space in your heart and life, and it is a change and a commitment to yourself. We have the podcast of Creating Positive Space. You can write that down if you want. And commitment to yourself, there are 3 episodes to that. That would be a good one for you to start at. And there is, we were saying, with positive space, you're deciding with positive space to open up your heart for a newness of change to take place in your life, and recognizing how unhealthy eating, being indecisive, or handling stress the wrong way can cause buildup in your thought life and how you respond to others. And when I say buildup, it can be like a bacteria infection or some type of mold in our heart when we have negative space, which is why you want to try as much as you can to keep your heart clean for your own benefit. And if you have children, for them. There are so many different negative spaces, which is why we take time and try to discuss some of them. There's no way we get through all of them, even though we're doing April through June and July to September and October through December or January, because it's still many more. We just touch on some that we usually know. Most people who come from some type of abusive background usually have problems to deal with when it comes to sins of the heart. Now, if you want to learn how to create everlasting peace in your life one day at a time, you may want to also go to our podcast. I forgot to tell you the name of our podcast will be Spreaker.com/user/encouragement. And you want to listen to the episode that says create everlasting peace or commitment to yourself. There are 3 episodes in both of those. Now, these are the steps that you need to take in order to recognize negative spaces in your life. Step 1, you want to look in your heart and see what negative space you have created in your life. You can get out a piece of paper and write that down. Some people are more visual learners in their heart, and they will maybe write that inside their mind or in their heart. Some people journal it, however you want to do it. We've had one client that made a video about it so that she can go back and look about her negative spaces and the positive spaces. She chose to replace her negative space with positive space. Step 2 would be you want to be open-hearted and acknowledge to yourself what negative space you have allowed in your life, because as you begin to acknowledge things and you begin to open up your heart, it's easier to breathe physically, emotionally, and it's easier inwardly to be tuned into things such as trying to work on yourself every day or change the process steps in thinking of your mind. The step 3 would be you want to be open to change and learn to create positive space in your heart and life. And as you begin to create positive space in your heart and life, one positive space you can learn to create is forgiving yourself. 90% of the time, so many people have not forgiven themselves that it's hard to move on and forgive others, or to just love yourself no matter what has happened or what it is. If you could just love yourself. So the next step would be your life mission statement. It says as you have read the Microsoft document, but we do have a Microsoft document in PowerPoint here. And if you want us to mail it to you, please please call us or email us, and we'll be glad to email it to you or mail it to you, because we know that everybody do not have access to email or internet. We'll give you that information in a minute, but you want to get a piece of paper and write down your mission statement if you don't want us to mail the PowerPoint to you, where you can see for yourself the mission statement written out. And all you do is you can write down however you want to do it, or if you want to write it down. This mission statement is all about me and what I would like to work on within my own life, your life cycle, and what I would do for me. You have to decide how you want to do it. What is in my heart that I need to work on? And I drew a little triangle there, and then I drew another little triangle next to it, and I've written, how do I want to grow as a person? And then the other little triangle, I've written, what things do I need to let go of in my life so that I can move on with my life? And as you want to answer those questions, write that down. You begin designing your own life cycle, how you want your life cycle to be, or in your own mission statement if you so choose. For example, with my life cycle, what I said was, with my life cycle, I want to learn to love myself first so that I can learn to love my children. And this way, if I know that I need to love myself first, well, I can't love my children if I don't learn to love myself first. And as I'm learning to love myself first, that could be forgiving myself. It could be taking care of myself. Maybe it means drinking more water for me. Maybe it means cutting down on a lot of salt and sugar for me. Everybody have different areas that they need to work on. And only you know the areas that you need to work on. And afterwards I put, I am a person who loves myself. Therefore, I will start creating everlasting peace in my life by using more self-control in my eating habits, having better control of my anger, and reducing the amount of stress in my life. So, we've gotten through your life cycle, and now I can give you our phone number and our email address so that you can have that. Our phone number at Encouragement Services is this is an international number. It's 1-866-524-4828. Again, it's 1-866-524-4828. You will dial extension 2836 for the services department, and we will be glad to take your message. If we do not answer, please leave us a message, and we will return your call, whether it's having us send out pamphlets about what we do, or if you're wanting information about how you can receive this mission statement or the Microsoft document so that we can mail that to you, or if you want us to email it to you as well. We have a main number. That main number is 419-956-4172. It's 419-956-4172, and you can leave a message for that one. But our toll number is international, and it's accessible anywhere. Our email address is services at the word encouragement, encouragementinthetrauma.org. That would be services at encouragementinthetrauma.org. And our podcast is at Spreaker.com/user/encouragement. We want to say thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that we have encouraged you somehow today to be able to progress in your stage of your life cycles and to make better choices for yourself, to learn from your mistakes, bad choices, or sins that you've made in the past. Please let us know how we're doing. Thank you so much.